Billy, how are you?
Good. I just came from the studio, so I'm a little buzzed out. Good,
Oh,
good to
that's
talk
okay.
to you.
I'll try to go easy on you then.
Yes, please.
Are you working on new material in the studio?
Yeah, working on a new album that'll be the one after Autumn.
Fantastic. Okay. Can I ask, is it a sort of a continuation of the narrative from Autumn or something different altogether?
No, I haven't really written any lyrics. I'm a little, I'm a little fried from conceptual work, so we're
Yeah.
just trying to make a good old fashioned rock and roll record. But we'll see.
Hmm.
Sometimes when I get in there, I start to lean on things that sort of kind of guide me. So I I've thought about it either way because people seem to be enjoying the narrative. So um, yeah, it's hard to say. It's still early days, as they say.
Okay. Fantastic. Well, I wanted to ask you, I was watching the chat that you had with Joe Rogan, which I think is about 5 years old now, but there was a clip I was watching where you talked about this sort of indicated that you wanted to keep these two passions of yours separate, the music and the wrestling, and you felt that the fan bases of each wouldn't have an interest in the other. So I was surprised when I saw this tour announced. I think it's a brilliant idea, but I was wondering what sort of brought about the change of heart to bring these passions together.
It's partially due to the fact that my interest in the NWA is creating a mainstream product, meaning that the average person who doesn't like wrestling or doesn't understand wrestling would enjoy it.
Mhm.
Because I do think there's a market for that. Um, and and then additionally, um, what am I trying to say? Uh, there's an inescapable part to combining what you can bring to the table, meaning me personally, that
Mhm.
creates that kind of general interest. So there are times where they kind of go together,
Yep.
and I think the fact that I'm sort of in control of these situations with the world as a vampire, I feel comfortable because as maybe uh, convoluted as it might seem, wrestlers don't like to be put into a situation where they feel lesser than. I mean, nobody does. And so it's important for me as the owner of the company, if I'm going to put the wrestlers in that situation, I need to make sure that they walk out of that feeling positive, well treated, and well respected, or that will also blow back at me. So because I kind of have a certain control over how this goes, it felt like the right situation. I don't think it would work just about anywhere, but this in this construct it can. And we just did it in Mexico and it went beautifully.
I guess there are so many wrestling federations in America. Is it a very cutthroat industry in the sense of trying to reach new markets, new demographics?
No. I think it's uh it's a little bit like punk rock in back in the day, in the sense that people in wrestling feel marginalized by American culture. So there's a kind of camaraderie, even if people work for different companies.
Okay.
It's not to say it's not competitive, but it's a balance between a kind of a fraternity and competitive. Maybe it would be like if you're a college basketball player and you know somebody plays on another team.
Hmm. Yeah.
It there's a sort of fraternity aspect to it. With the sale of WWE now to the people who own UFC, um, that really is going to accelerate the market, because now there are going to be innumerable opportunities. Um, because as Vince McMahon has proven over time, wrestling is a widely undervalued entertainment product. And in America, for years, and I mean, this goes back 50 or 60 years, it's always treated as a bit like lowbrow,
Mm.
you know, New York Times looks down their nose kind of type of thing.
Yeah.
Um, uh, Although I just did a thing for the New York Times, and the guy allowed me to put NWA in my it was like a top 10 list thing. So I should be nice about that. But you understand my point. It's like, oh, that's what the people who live in trailer parks do or something. And it's big business. I mean, you have mainstream crossover celebrities, mainstream crossover um, MMA stars. Bad Bunny, who's one of the biggest pop stars in the world, does stuff with WWE.
Hmm.
The Paul brothers, who are obviously huge social media influencers as well as professional boxers, they do stuff with WB. So I think people are starting to finally come around to understand that it's just another entertainment
Mm.
product like anything else, and that lowbrow thing has kind of finally gone off it. Sorry, that's a bit of a ramble, but
No, no,
uh,
yeah. So the sense that the kind of the rising tide lifts all boats to an extent.
oh yeah, when I got
Yeah.
into professional wrestling, I mean everybody was like, "What are you doing? Is this like a lark?" And I kept saying, "No, it really, believe it or not, it is a really good business opportunity. It's a difficult one, but it is a business opportunity." And so at least now, in this current climate, I don't seem so crazy as I did when I started into this about 10 years ago.
Mm. I've been watching the clips of you actually stepping into the ring as Billy Corgan, the owner of the NWA, and sort of the part of the theatrics of it. How have you found that? I mean, it looks like it's a hell of a lot of fun.
It can be. It's a lot of work behind the scenes. And so it's weird because I'll give you one mental image, which is, imagine I put on a show. Um, I pay for everybody to be there, flights, hotels, obviously pay the talent costs, TV trucks, the whole thing. It's an expensive day to run a live. We're about to run a live broadcast this Friday, and I will spend the entire time not watching one moment of wrestling in the room with people.
Right.
I'll either be behind a curtain or I'm in a TV truck. So it's
Mm.
a very odd life like that. You know what I mean? To spend all this energy and money to put on a big show, and I don't get to go sit in the front row and watch the show. So oftentimes putting yourself in the middle of the show is actually more stress,
Mm.
because it's kind of like I got all these other things I got to deal with. And oh, by the way, now I got to go in front of people and like not stumble over my words or whatever is the point of me being out there. So we try to pick the spots of when I'm out there.
Okay.
Um, there's a legendary thing where owners try to always make it about them.
Hmm.
So I've tried so far to not make it about me.
From what I understand, you reached out to the Wrestling Alliance of Australia, and these exhibition matches will be against NWA wrestlers and Aussie wrestlers. What are the sort of logistics involved in terms of? I mean, are the wrestlers coming out to Australia ahead of time to meet with and spar and rehearse with the Australian wrestlers, or surely you're not winging it on the night?
No, they wing it. They wing it.
They do.
It's amazing. Yeah. Um, I'm going to say this in the really simple way, not because you can't understand, but it's just the simplest way to answer the
Mhm.
question.
Yeah.
Wrestlers are trained like a jazz musician to improvise basically with anybody.
Okay.
So you can take 2, 3, 4, 5 wrestlers, say,
Mm.
okay, this is what we're going to do, put them in a room. They will talk about what they're going to do, and they will go out in the ring,
Yep.
never having touched one another, and go out and do a 10-minute match and execute. It's
Right.
amazing.
Yeah. Okay.
That's one of the great valued things that they do. So it is not unusual that a female wrestler from America will be meeting an Aussie wrestler, and they'll meet that day at 2 p.m. and they'll be in the ring at 5, putting on, doing a match, never having been in a ring before in front of people.
So I imagine there's a conversation about who's going to come out on top and that sort of thing. I mean, there must be some structure to it.
Yeah, that's what people tend to focus on, kind
Yeah.
of like how does the movie end? But
Hmm.
the real art is telling the story.
Sure.
And that's what we focus on. Um, we understand why people focus on how the movie ends, but really what the focus on in the business is how you tell the story and
Hmm.
how you execute in the ring. Um, I know it may sound strange, but
Mm.
it's like if you watched a movie and yeah, the good guy comes out in the end, but then you turn off the movie and go, man, the guy playing the bad guy was awesome. I
Yeah.
want to see all his other movies. That's kind of how you build your rep in wrestling, is more how you come across the audience, not how the movie ends.
Now, obviously, you're also bringing this new album, this incredible new album to Australia. And I've been loving the sort of process of immersing myself in it, not just the sort of the cosmic sound of it, but the narrative as well. And it definitely takes a lot of sonic twists and turns throughout. And it occurred to me, as someone that's, I mean, I've always been a fan of your music, but I think it really hit home this time in particular that no matter, the Smashing Pumpkins sound has become harder to define, but the moment your vocals appear, it's a Smashing Pumpkins song because you have one of the most distinctive voices in modern music. are you sort of cognizant of that? I mean, does having such a distinctive voice, the sense that as long as your voice is there, it's a Pumpkin song, is that creatively liberating?
I don't know, my daddy, who's passed away now, he used to tell me, because I would lament to him at different times about how people perceive different musical endeavors,
Hmm.
and he would just laugh and say, as long as your voice is on there, it's a Pumpkin song.
Right. Okay.
And that was his advice. So when you were asking me that, it was like it took me back to what he would say. So um yeah, I don't know. I feel like I've been through so many it's an old 70s way of putting it, but like through so many head changes about it
Mm.
that I really don't think about it much anymore. I know that might sound strange.
Mm.
It's like if somebody's told you something so many times, positive and negative, there just comes a point where you just don't hear it anymore, and then it just becomes about how you feel.
Mhm.
um and so with everything, the sound of the band, the songs I write, the way I produce the music, the sound of my voice, the way I play guitar, I've just internalized in my own kind of, you know I don't want to say I'm my own worst critic, but uh, I just have my own impressions of those things. So I think over time it's become less about how people perceive those things, because it never quite works out the way I want it to. So I've never been one of those people that, like, people innately are attracted to everything that I do or most of what I do. So it's always been a bit of a, I have to kind of take a step back
Mhm.
to figure out why I bother if, I have to hear about, I mean, I give you an example of the voice. Like about 7 years ago, this weird thing started in the fan community, and I would hear about it. It's not like I was on message boards about,
Mm.
oh, his voice is changing and he can't
Oh.
sing the way he used to anymore. And then the big thing was he can't scream anymore.
Oh, okay.
And all these things are not true. I can sing how I used to sing. I actually can sing higher than I used to sing,
Mm.
and I could sing all the old styles if I want to. I just don't necessarily want to. So occasionally I'll do a show or something where I'll kind of pull out the old voice or do certain things, and then people will run to their keyboards and like, "Oh my God, did you did you hear?" Or, it's so weird to me because it's not something I would think that people would be paying a ton of attention to.
Mm.
In essence, like, it's one thing to say, "Hey, my favorite rock singer, his voice has changed over time." I mean, that's just sort of natural.
Mm.
But when it gets into like weird conspiratorial things, and then I meet people in airports and they're asking me like kind of weird questions, like, so like I remember a kid walked up to me in the airport, like 25 years old,
Mm.
and all he said to me, he looked at me, goes, "I liked you better when you screamed."
Oh.
That's what he said to me. And I
Right.
go, so my whole value in life to you is whether or not I can scream.
Mm.
It's like, so I'm saying all that stuff just makes you kind of just check out.
Yeah, I imagine it would. I mean, that would drive me insane. But until you check out, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've always been a big fan of concept albums throughout my whole life. When I was a kid, I was obsessed with El Dorado by Electric Light Orchestra, and even the modern bands like the Mars Volta that attempt these sort of larger conceptual pieces. I've always loved. So, of course, I'm loving Autumn. Uh, there's this fear of thought that the album is dead and modern music consumers don't listen to albums in their totality and only want to consume singles. Is that something you agree with, and you've made this album in spite of that, or do you think that that's actually a bit of an overstatement?
No, I think by and large, we're seeing across the spectrum, whether it's TV viewing, album listening, people watching movies, how people consume, we see radical shifts in those things.
Hmm.
So I think if you were to say something along the lines of like, you know, dot dot dot, the album is dead,
Mm.
I think there's a lot of evidence for that.
Mm.
Um, look, we're long past Sergeant Pepper's, where people sat in a circle, smoked some weed and listened to the whole record and then listened to it again and
Mm.
analyzed the lyrics. I just think we're in a different time. I'm of the camp that you shouldn't let the culture dictate what you're interested in. Um, Picasso painted shitty landscapes and he made ceramic pottery. I just think that there's a point when whatever you feel you need to express, you should just do it. And there's plenty of evidence to suggest that over time, things that have substance, it's less about whether or not it mattered at the time that it came out. It's a Wonderful Life was basically a studio movie picture made like a lot of pictures. So was Casablanca.
Mhm.
Casablanca was recognized at the time as being above average grade, but it wasn't considered a classic.
Yeah.
It was considered a very good studio picture. It's a Wonderful Life, I think, lost money.
Yeah.
It was considered a failure.
Mhm.
And now, all these years later, people look at that, what those movies represent as high works of a certain time. And you can see the hallmarks in both movies of the studio process, the studio, the character actors that were in the movie.
Mhm.
These movies were made to be commercial vehicles.
Yep.
So you could sit there and say, well, at the time they were X, Y, and Z. I mean, I've made albums that were considered complete, utter failures at the time.
Mm.
Adore being one of them. And now it's completely, the complete opposite experience now.
Yeah.
People talk about it with great reverence and respect. At the time, I was pilloried and told I was an idiot and I should have made, Melancholy 2 and all that stuff. So when you've had those experiences, you're less, I think, attuned to whether or not something's trendy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we were never really trendy. We were always kind of against the grain. When everybody was playing 3-minute pop songs, we were playing 7-minute, jams with solos, and it's just the way we were. So
yeah.
Contrarian, I believe is the word.
And it's proved a success in that respect. My understanding of the narrative of Autumn and the shiny character, a rock star who was adored, and then the powers that be have exiled him, attempted to erase him and silence him. Is there, how much of Billy Corgan is in the shiny character?
A lot, but not totally.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that would be as interesting a story as this. I would say where is most fundamentally different is I think Shiny's a different person in the story than I am. Meaning, I wouldn't necessarily make the same decision as Shiny. So it was fun to play with that. You know what I mean? To try to put myself in the position of like, well, if I would normally go left, he's going to go right. What happens with that? That's less, I guess, less predictable to me and puts me in different emotional states of how to think it through. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, any narrative is always kind of reductionist on some level. You can't get into that level of detail, right? So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of parallels because I've used the characters through time to express things that I need to sort of explore for myself. But there's just, like I said, there's just as much stuff that I wouldn't do because I'm interested. I let the character kind of tell me what decisions he would make or she would make.
Well, Billy, we're so close to running out of time, so rather than try to squeeze one more question in, I should let you go. I don't want to make you run late, but it was thank you so much for taking the time to speak to me. I know you've been in high demand, and I really love chatting to you.
Cheers, my friend. Bye.